Hello, everyone. Welcome to BowTieSecurityGuy After Dark, episode 20, which I'm pretty excited about. I've now put out like 17 hours of this fucking thing, which is wild to me. Uh, with me is Cynthia. How do you pronounce your last name? Is it Dumuk? Dumak. All right, I was very terrible. But Cynthia and I had worked together at Disney for a long time. We've continued to chit chat. She was one of the first people who like reached out when I got on LinkedIn and like was like, "Hey, I got laid off." She was super supportive, and I'm truly thankful for that. I've been trying to get you to come hang out for a while because your career in technology and cyber is quite interesting. Like you started with the 286 signal company in like 99 and then somehow ended up like running as a director of security for Disney. Like how did that even start? How did you like get into security? Like what started your whole interest in technology?
Oh my gosh. My interest in technology, I think, started as long as I can remember. When I was 4, my parents got our first PC. You remember when PCs were new, right? We got a Commodore VIC-20 and I was off and running. I was fascinated by writing words and those words turned into pictures. And ever since then, I've been interested in technology. My dad was an electronics engineer. And so my second earliest memory was with a soldering iron and desoldering parts in my dad's business so that he didn't have to buy new bits and bobs and sorting resistors and capacitors by power and ratings. So that's how I got my start in technology. I think it's sort of in my blood. How I got my start in security was interesting. As you also know, back in the day, there wasn't any such thing as like cybersecurity or security.
In-
It was
Information technology was where
that's as
it finally
sexy as you
came in
got,
like the
right?
90s. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was we, you, I, everybody in the field was just doing our tech job. I was a
Yep.
telecom engineer. I built massive global networks. And by network, I don't just mean computers stuck together on a wire. I mean phones, internet, PABXs, wiring boxes, you name it. They just called that the network. It was any communication stuff you might need.
I like how you're downplaying the telecommunications you built for the army to like in battle to support soldiers. But cool, cool. So you built these huge systems that are literally life-saving communication systems where redundancy, security, and all of those things was kind of paramount. But that was even before we even really thought about these things. You were already kind of thinking about them, like how could a bad actor get into this? How could, a foreign entity gain access to these communications where we're communicating where our strike is going to be, where, all of those different things. So you did that for how long? Like how long were you in the communications biz for?
About 11 years.
Oh my goodness. And then when you got out of the military, I saw that you went into NATO, which is basically like military light. Everyone I know is just like that's a pretty normal transition. How were you able to break out of the military and kind of get into the civilian realm of technology? Like, was that an opportunity that presented itself, or was it just like you met somebody who said, "Hey, you should come do this with us"?
Well, it was my last job in the army. NATO was my last assignment.
Oh, was
And
it?
yeah, and that was a coincidence because there I was in Iraq and my boss, General Rife, was the head of all of northern Iraq. He was basically the mayor of the northern part of Iraq. And I worked directly for him, providing communications and VIP assistance. So all these heads of state and dignitaries would visit him, and I took care of their safety and well being. I did that for 2 years. I ran a hotel in Iraq for 2 years. Ask me about that another time. And after that was done, my follow on assignment was NATO, and I had him to thank for it. He put in a good word at branch. He said I did a pretty good job, and I had this incredible opportunity to do cryptography for 138 countries that all didn't speak English, which was great. I loved it. And in Italy, by the way.
Oh,
So,
that must have been
not the
cool.
worst place to be assigned
No, no, there's
as it
definitely
happened.
worse places for sure.
Yeah. I did not hate that assignment. It was my last assignment in the Army, and I loved it. Every bit of it was interesting. I met new people in new cultures, and I traveled to something like 50 countries in the span of 3 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was crazy.
How did you work around language barriers and things of that nature when they don't speak any language? Did you learn different languages or did
I
you have a
learned
translator that hung
I
with
learned
you?
how to butcher a number of languages, but the languages of NATO are French and English. So fortunately, I speak most of one of those and part of another one of those. So I managed. And also, I just really enjoy learning. And as you can probably relate, I really like problem solving, and learning the emergency version of a language to go travel somewhere and build communications is kind of my jam. Although I didn't quite learn Russian before I worked on a Russian vessel for counter piracy, so that was an adventure too. So there
Like
there were
piracy is in
some.
like legit pirates, like water
Yes.
pirates?
So if you can remember, uh, there was a huge piracy issue in the Gulf of Aden, and that's a major corridor for trading for the globe. And so NATO was providing maritime security and partnering with other nations. So we had a partnership for peace, and Russia was part of that. Morocco was part of that. There were a number of countries that were part of that. And as it happens, you probably need to communicate vessel to vessel if you're providing maritime security. And so you stick the Army girl on a Navy ship and make her fix your communications so they can talk to each other.
Oh my
Go
gosh.
figure. Yes, that was one of the many, many, many interesting and fun adventures that I got to have.
So you did that for what, 12 years basically? Like 12, 13 years
11. It
total?
was 11 years. It was from
11 years.
99 to 2010.
And then when you got out, how was that transition? I mentor and work with a lot of people who are transitioning from like military to civilian life. Like, how did that work out? What was your first gig that you ended up scoring out of the military?
So coincidentally, and this is not unusual for folks in my field, because I'd worked in intelligence and communications, I'd made a few military and non-military contacts, and they reached out to me. And so I ended up working for a small contracting firm called the McKellar Corporation, which was all State Department and military, and some folks that were in the Peace Corps, which was really cool because I didn't know about the Peace Corps before. And I got to learn about that. It's an incredible organization, by the way, as a side. Um, I was working on modeling and simulation and cybersecurity intel analysis for the Pentagon as a contractor. So it felt like diet military for another 3 years.
Military light.
Yeah.
Were you in Virginia? Like you were working at the Pentagon, or were
Mhm.
you? Yeah,
I was physically
that's always
located.
cool.
I was physically located in Virginia, and I went to the Pentagon every day. I walked, biked, took transportation. It was like trains, planes, and automobiles. I did the typical DC commute for 3 years, and I really loved all of the things that I got to do there and the people I got to meet. I got to practice video game level editing as part of my job.
Interesting. Yeah, you built simulations, right?
Yeah.
For different scenarios and things of that nature. So, had you had experience with that before, or is it? I feel like a lot of us in technology, we're just like, what do you want me to do? All right, that sounds cool. And then
It
we
was
just
kind
get
of that.
real obsessed.
It was a little bit of that, but it was also, when you're deployed, and I was deployed for most of my military career, like a lot of my classmates, people that were in my peer group, many of us were deployed 4, 5, 6 times. So, what do you do when you're stuck in a place where you can't really do anything? You play video games. And I played video games. Probably read 1,000 books or more, but I also played video games. And like many of my peers, I played deeply immersive role play games because anything for escapism from that kind of environment is going to be extremely viral. So in that, I developed kind of a muscle for understanding what right size was for that specific genre of video games. So my genres are, not that it's really related, but it's kind of related: mystery, problem solving, puzzle games, deeply immersive RPGs, open world concept games. I'm not your first person shooter person because I just get frustrated at dying 20 times in a minute. Um, but all of that gave me the ability to look into simulations, and because a video game is essentially a poorly written or a poorly designed simulation on purpose.
Yeah.
And part of what I did for the military as a non-military person was I worked with the gaming industry to make the simulation in military games more accurate,
Yeah.
because people were getting hurt by exercising the muscle memory they learned in combat games in combat.
I didn't even think about that. Like you would retain that muscle memory, and then when you're in a true combat situation, it may not be the same. So how were you able to even, is that just the way that your mind thinks? Like you can kind of say, okay, in reality, physics doesn't work this way. Here's how things would have gone. And then you basically reprogrammed levels to be more accurate to real life. So those scenarios would play out in a more real world scenario. So that muscle memory developed could then be utilized in combat.
kind of kind of like that. It was a lot of that and a lot of talking to and storytelling. As you
Mhm.
know from Disney, storytelling is kind of the superpower of companies like Disney and entertainment organizations in general.
Oh yeah,
The
for
video
sure.
game companies also have a huge storytelling element because it helps to reinforce immersion.
Yep. Sells the
So,
narrative, so sells the game. And
yeah,
honestly, like you can have a really good story with really crappy graphics and the game will be amazing, right?
right, exactly. You can have crappy anything. If the story is super compelling, you're going to keep coming back to the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And Skyrim was a big proof of that for me,
Oh yeah.
for example. But yeah, so I was working with these video game companies and they were legitimately listening, and I would story tell about, Joe Snuffy is my favorite person. All of the people who have ever worked for me know Joe Snuffy is my go-to for examples. Well, Joe Snuffy, the private, is 18 to 22 years old and could be a boy or girl or whatever, doesn't matter. But Joe Snuffy, the private, who's 18 to 22, spends about 30 hours a week immersed in combat games. And this is
Yep.
actually true. They spend a significant amount of time playing games because they don't have a lot of income. They don't have a lot of social time. And so what do? You do what you can to make connection. Well,
100%.
they're not training 30 to 40 hours a week. They are spending 30 to 40 hours a week in the military, but you're not doing combat training in all of that time. So what do you think you're going to retain? Are
That
you going
makes
to
sense.
retain actively understanding how to, and to compensate for the wind and the terrain, or are you going to react like you have 1,000 times in a combat scenario in a simulation that happens to be a video game?
How cool.
And so video game companies really listened, and this is where games like Call of Duty became much more realistic. Gaming companies started to retain military members with combat experience on their staff. It was kind of a neat job.
Yeah.
And then I
Can't
got to build
imagine.
live combat scenarios and live State Department vignettes. I wrote 48 four-dimensional live action simulations for State Department and Special Forces organizations to go to what we used to call highly kinetic, interpret that how you will, environments in third countries. So,
Yeah, yeah.
not our country and not friendly countries. And so, the video gaming led to the serious gaming or the the converting video games to more realistic combat for specifically combat games to immersive live action scenarios. I guess you could say live action role play.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a strange and wonderful journey that I actually got paid to do.
So then, so then you left there and then somehow ended up at the House of the Mouse where I met you. Like,
Yes.
and how the hell did that transition happen? Like, you were the director of security and engineering, right? I think that was your first
My
gig there.
my first gig was the director of security architecture and engineering.
Yeah, yeah,
And that actually role didn't exist before, and the role wasn't really that defined. So I had the pleasure of working with the Global Information Security Department and defining it.
yeah,
And our first definition was to collaborate and create a way to see the security posture of a company as large as Disney.
yeah, yeah,
And then to be able to tailor, and I don't know that we did a complete job, but we certainly started the journey and it was really fascinating. I made a lot of great contacts. I wanted to meet all the security teams, and there were quite a few, if you can
yeah,
imagine, in a company with over 100 business units across, at the time, 6 divisions in,
yeah.
gosh,
100
how
plus
many countries?
20,000
Yeah,
employees. Yeah, and
right.
all over the world. Yeah.
So I made an effort to get to know them and ask them what they needed. And I think if I got to work on 3 amazing projects, it was a lot more than that, but 3 that I remember. One was building the foundation for cloud security, because the company didn't really, it was, as you know, at the time, it wasn't really a thing, right?
Hmm.
And so we forayed into understanding what was our cloud footprint, what even was this thing called the cloud, which I can tell you where the term cloud came from. You'll laugh, but we'll get there. But understanding this thing that was this distributed network that we didn't control, and that's scary. Understanding just how much data was leaving us and going there, for legitimate reasons, but still, we didn't have our arms wrapped around a visibility of all that. So the project to develop that visibility and then develop a framework for protecting that data and understanding the impacts of that data, how people were interacting with it, that was all foundational. So that was one project I got to work on that I consider novel and interesting.
Yeah.
Another project I got to work on was I got to work on building the security for Shanghai Disney,
Oh,
which
that's
was
where you and
amazing.
I work. That's where you and I work together a whole
Yep.
lot.
And I also wrote the definition for how we look at physical security in our manufacturing base. And
Yeah.
and Internet of Things. I pioneered the Internet of Things security, OT security for Disney.
Yep. Yep. You and I worked together on the IoT. Like I was the first IoT security specialist they hired, and then you and I hit it off immediately, and we're like, "Ooh, let's go build stuff." And then
Let's
we,
go work on
yeah.
fun things. Yes.
I remember talking and doing presentations too, talking to the different people with the SCADA environments and stuff, and being like, "Hey,
Yep.
no, like you need to secure this, and here's why," and becoming that kind of expert. And you were one of those huge supporters. What I thought was awesome about you is like you weren't ever like really trying to build like a kingdom. Like you were comfortable with who you were, and you weren't going to take crap from anyone, um, which I loved and found completely awesome. But how did that like as a female in technology, has that been career limiting to you being a strong independent female in this technology field? Because I've seen many times where if a guy does the exact same thing, it's completely fine. But if a woman does it, then they're a pain or difficult to work with. And I always find that really interesting. Anyone who tells me like, oh, this she's a pain to work with, I'm like, oh, I want to talk with that person because they're probably just an independent person and you're just a weak ass dude.
Yeah, I will say that I'm sure it's played a factor. I mean, I'm a senior director, and I've watched my male counterparts become VPs that were managers when
Yeah,
I was director. And I've I talk to them. I definitely do not begrudge, nor do I have any ill will towards anyone who
No,
achieves.
why
This
would
isn't
you?
about that. I can be simultaneously delighted for my friends and my colleagues and disappointed for me.
Of
And so
course.
I will say that I'll give you a comical story that is
Sure.
sort of a analogy of how my career seems to go. And I can tell you I am connected to many independent, free thinking, brilliant ladies, and this is sort of analogous to their experience too. I was invited to be a speaker in Napa for a very large organization I will not name. And I was grateful to be invited. I was genuinely invited for my own merits. I was invited to be part of a tete-a-tete CXO summit in a beautiful place in Napa. And I was allowed to bring my husband, which is amazing because he's a delight. So my husband and I proceed to go to Napa. And the first thing that happens when we walk in is the representative on site, who may not have known me, escorts my husband into the talk and me into the area with all the wives who are going wine tasting.
Yeah.
They didn't even ask. They didn't ask who I was. They didn't, they, I had my name tag on, so they saw my name, but they still, as their assumption was that my husband was the speaker and I was the guest.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that has been my experience in tech. I've also experienced for a very long time being the only or one of a very small number of female technical leaders in the room. I'd go to these events and I would be exceptionally unique, or I would find one other very wonderful, extremely experienced lady, um, and we'd hit it off. But it'd be like finding an oasis in the desert. And I do not mean that in the sense that the men are bad, because I love all my male counterparts. They're a delight, as I said. I learn from them every day. But it's just really difficult to see yourself.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I wanted you to come hang. In all honesty, I try to have a lot of women on the podcast because, like, I want other young female technologists to be like, "Hey, it's possible, right? There are people out there. There are people who've done it. Can it be a little more difficult? Sure. But I mean, honestly, like, there's a lot to be said about ageism and things now too, right? Like,
Yes.
it's pretty common for anyone over the age of 40 to not be looked at as seriously in a cyber career. And if you're over the age of 50 or 60, it's even harder because they just assume you're going to retire anytime soon. Like, I mentor a lot of people, and you're having those conversations, and they're like, okay, yeah, we could hire this person. They have a wealth of knowledge, but we would rather hire someone younger who's going to stick around longer, which is funny to me because the tech industry as a whole has gone to like a 2 to 3 year cadence for your job. Like, it's wild to me that these companies want loyalty, but they only hire people who are going to stick around, and then they lay them off in a year or two. Like it, and it
Well,
happens so regularly now.
the tech industry is in flux, and I don't I would actually not conflate the two. I would say that the sense of ageism is not related to the tech industry being in flux and having these massive layoffs. I think we saw something akin to this. You see this every decade or so. You saw this in the 90s when the dot-com bubble was being built and then burst. And then you
Mhm.
saw this in the early 2000s, the internet generation, when internet was new. And now you're seeing, so 2008, I will say, was like the big crash led to a lot of churn. And now you're seeing it in 2022, where post pandemic the world needed to contract, our economy needed to contract, and tech was where we saw it the most, because tech is the industry which is the most remote friendly. And if you're remote friendly, then you can outsource your tech workers to a more affordable area. That's got
It
nothing to do
is
with your
such
age
a,
and everything to do
it's,
with business.
yeah, it is such a double-edged sword with that, right? It's like we want to work remote, we want to have that flexibility, but it's like, yeah, you're right, you can do your job remote. So much so that we're going to hire a bunch of people in another country, like you said, that's a lot less expensive.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
I had those
that's a business
conversations.
thing, right?
It is, yeah, for sure.
And I think businesses are adapting. There's still, I see lots of people getting fired, and then I see a lot of get people getting opportunities. So it's in flux.
Yeah,
I'm not pessimistic about the churn. I will say it's absolutely a time to get new skills and learn stuff and
and,
adapt.
and, and
And
network, like meet people
for
and have
sure,
conversations,
for sure, because we are, none of us is as good as all of us together.
for sure.
My old company used to say that none of us is as good as all of us, and I really do believe that is true. Community is what gets us through, to be fair. But ageism is a phenomenon that I see, and I strongly and firmly disagree with it, not just because I'm in my 40s, but because of this. I went on a rafting trip and I met the guy that designed the Sea Risk chipset. Okay.
Oh,
How
cool.
cool is that? I spent 4 days picking that man's brain. Are you kidding me?
Exactly.
What, you would want that guy on your team
Yeah, yeah,
because
for
that
sure.
guy has seen some stuff.
Yep.
You want everything on your team. I want the energy of the intern that comes in just learning Python and so excited they want to automate everything for you. That's
Yeah.
amazing. But I also want my postdoc who I had on my team, who was a bohemian academic from Colombia.
Yeah.
And this man brought a calm, and this guy had seen it all. And you know that he was a troubleshooting champion. When something broke, he could jump in and say, I seem to remember. And he would be able to pinpoint the problem that would save us hours and even days of troubleshooting
Yeah.
because he'd seen it and he'd done it. That doesn't mean he didn't have something to learn. He learned from the intern,
Of
but the
course.
intern learned from him. So
I,
ageism is like any other kind of discrimination. It's short-sighted and it doesn't build a resilient big team or product.
no, and you've really got to think too, like you've got a lot of these skill gaps, and I try to explain to people to stop chasing unicorns and to start investing in people again. Like if you've got somebody who's excited, who has the adaptability to learn, I will hire that person over somebody who's much more technical any day of
Sure.
the week. Like, because those are the type of people you can put into anything. Like, I mean, you're a great example of that, right? You're super adaptable. You've done a bunch of stuff in technology. You're a servant leader who kind of goes above and beyond for people. And I always found you really awesome to work with because you were always trying to find common footing. Even when people were vehemently aggressive with you, you would never take the bait. You would just try to kind of reiterate, hey, we're here together. Let's try to work through this. And there's so little of those people in technology. There's a lot of kingdom builders, there's a lot of people who are trying to make names for themselves, etc. But there's so few people who really want to increase the security posture of your company, like and truly care about it.
I think
Like looking at this market now, what are some tips that you would give to new people who are going into this field? Is it,
oh, that's a good one. I would say be excited.
yeah.
I would
I
say,
I want it to be palpable. Like I want to feel it
yeah,
coming off of you in the interview. And I know that sucks because people who are neurodivergent may not be able to express those emotions. And I did a video recently where I said the time of being a wallflower is dead. Like you can't, you've got to learn social skills and soft skills to be competitive in this modern job market. It's very difficult.
absolutely. And it's a paradox, isn't it? Because we created a lot more neurodivergence during the pandemic, where
What
this
what
was your only social interaction,
yeah.
and social media is completely artificial.
Yeah.
You you take 200 pictures just to because you're anxious that someone's going to see a flaw. Like people
Yeah.
have flaws. Human beings are imperfect. We're imperfect produce, right? We
Yep.
You know what, one of the most endearing things about people is that they are imperfect.
Well, there's a Japanese philosophy called wabi-sabi, which is
Ah, I
I
like
may be
Wallace. Yes.
mispronouncing it. I have no idea. But it's about finding the beauty in imperfection. And like I recently got a tattoo done, and it has like D&D dice on it, and one of the numbers was wrong. And like most people would just go apoplectic, right? Like, but I was like, now that tattoo artist is part of my tattoo. Like like, sure, he made a mistake, but it's beautiful. Like now that number, sure, it's not right. No one's gonna see it but me. No
Right.
one is gonna see it but me. But now he's part of it. Now I will remember, like, hey, like, yeah, sure, that should be a 15, but it's a 12. That's okay because he's now part of that and accepting kind of life's imperfection. That's why I created this podcast in the way I do. I don't edit anything. I've had people's dogs start barking and stuff in the background. I've personally had emergencies happen while I'm on call. Like I put it out there because I want people to understand that that perfect mentality is garbage, right? Like no one is like that. Like someone's like, well, oh man, you put out a lot of content. Like, how do you do it? And I was like, I literally spend maybe 20 minutes a week. And I do it all in one take. And if it's not perfect, that's okay. I'm not chasing perfection. And one of the big things, like my life mottos is progress over perfection, right? Like you want to see things improve. And I think that's where a lot of security teams lose focus too, is that they're chasing perfection over progress. Like they're like, no, 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 that idea is not perfectly flushed out. It's like, it's never going to be when you have a bunch of neurodiverse people who hyper analyze every small flaw. Like I've talked to QA people and the quality assurance people have gone through it 100 times. They've done, I mean, you did it with video gaming, right? They've ran through that level 1,000 times. You've done every possible thing you could think somebody do, and then the next person crawls through the entire level and it glitches out, and you're like, really? Really? I never thought somebody would crawl, right? So
It's always the unanticipated thing. But
always,
that's what makes it interesting, to be
I
fair.
totally agree. Yeah.
I run when as you know, I've built probably half dozen global teams now for
Oh
security,
yeah.
of various different flavors. And I think the commonality I build is this philosophy of what are you measuring, and be honest about the whole story, because it is just as important to know what you're not doing as to know what you are. It's
Yeah.
not the pretty pictures, it's not the good news story. Making people aware of what's there is not good, it's not bad, it's fact.
Yep.
So if you start off and you pick up a rock and you see 100,000 bugs under it that you really did not want to see, fine, grab a hammer. I mean,
Yeah.
just like make it better. It doesn't have, you're not going to get every single bug. You're not going to get
Yeah.
every single vulnerability. You're not going to get every single error. You're not going to prevent every single silly thing that humans do with computers because we're silly humans and we like being curious.
Exactly.
But the important thing is to be honest, to measure, and to learn. If you can learn, you can improve.
And I think that's the key too for these young people who may be listening to this. Again, I have no idea what my numbers are. I don't check because I don't care. I'm specifically just like if you're listening to this and you're trying to think like how can I get that competitive edge, just be your unique self, and that's an edge enough. Like so many people try to fit into a narrative and they try to fit into a stereotype. I have conversations with people all the time where it's like their profile is incredibly like aspiring cybersecurity person. It's like, do you talk like that normally? Like if I asked you,
Some people
if I
do.
asked you, yeah, they do. Look, I get it, but be yourself. If that's yourself, awesome. But most of the time, it's like I didn't really know what to write because all of us in technology, I would argue 80 to 90% of us are neurodivergent because you don't go into a field of of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results and be like fully normal. Like
No,
that's just
you have to be Abby normal. I mean, I'm
yeah.
so far from normal. We're in different zip codes, but that's part of the
Yeah.
delight of being me.
Yeah. Well, being neurospicy is super fun, right? And like as you realize your neurodiversity and your neurospiciness is a superpower, like you're unstoppable once you get over your own fears of rejection, once you get over your own fears and self-doubt, there's nothing you can't do. Like I
That's
can't tell
true.
you how many people I've talked to and I'm like, "Hey, the only thing stopping you is you." Like you've got to
I
get out of
agree.
your own way.
I also think there's a lot of stigma over getting, mental wellness and mental health, and I think it is worth
Yeah.
mentioning that a pro athlete has a psychologist. There are team psychologists
Oh my
on
God, for
pro
sure.
athletic teams. Now, these are considered the most elite, idealized humans in whatever nation they're representing. And they have someone to help them with their health, their holistic health, physical health, spiritual health, mental health. It's all important. And we learn more and more things about the brain every day. Just
Yeah.
because you're different does not mean there is something wrong.
Right.
Neurospicy, neurodivergent does not mean bad.
No.
It literally means different.
Yeah, unique. And honestly, some of those abilities are superpowers. Like
They sure
I would
are.
argue that your ability to adapt, learn, overcome is really just an amazing type thing. And the way your brain operates is scientifically proven to be completely different than that of a neurotypical person with a, a billion more synapses firing than an average person just at a single thought. Like you and I, when we end this conversation, we will replay this conversation 1,000 times in our head, identifying ways that we can either improve things we said that we didn't really fully think were right, maybe tweaking things as we go. And it's not, when I found out that normal people don't do that, I was like, wait, what? You can just leave a conversation and it's done? That's amazing.
I'm like, how do you
Um,
do that?
yeah, no, but hey, I thank you so much for your time today. You are looking for work, yes? Like you're looking for an opportunity?
I am currently available for new adventures.
Awesome. I would hire you in a heartbeat to lead anything, in all honesty, and I would work for you. And for anyone who knows me, that is a bold statement. I don't I was that was one of the first people I reached out to when I got unemployed. I was like, hey, if you have opportunities, and you were like, oh my God, I will get you on my team if I can. Um,
Yes.
and the timing just didn't work out. And now that you're no longer there, I would have been bummed. But it's crazy how that works out, right? You never know those opportunities you may have thought you miss for the right reasons, right? Sometimes it just
Mhm.
wasn't the right time. Um, Please, if you're looking for someone to lead your cyber teams, architecture, engineering, literally damn near anything, Cynthia is absolutely phenomenal. Please reach out to her. Thank you again for your time. I truly appreciate it. You're awesome as always. I'm finally glad I could get you on to come hang out. And it turned out like when I clicked on your profile, I was like, oh crap, you're looking for work. Let's talk about that. So I can shill you while we're on the call so we can see what opportunities there are.
Well, I'm really grateful. It's always a delight to hang out with you, Robert.
Indeed.